Today's video is sponsored by our very own spring store, but more about that later.
Hi everybody and welcome to the surface interval. So let me just dust off my crystal ball quickly and look into the future of scuba diving. Right now, open circuit is king. Most people learn to dive on open circuit regulators. If you exhaled whilst you're on your scuba course and it blew bubbles, then it was an open circuit regulator. Or a snorkel, and you're doing it wrong. But we have more efficient ways of breathing underwater using clever machines called rebreathers. For those of you that don't know, rebreathers have a small tank of gas and a breathing loop that just circulates around every time you breathe, so you're effectively breathing the same lungful of gas over and over again for the entire dive. It gets scrubbed clean and analysed between breaths, and the rebreather tops it up with whatever you need, oxygen, so they're very, very clever. So that way you can effectively do a 2-hour dive on a tiny cylinder instead of 2 huge tanks. So why aren't more people diving with rebreathers? And are rebreathers the future of scuba diving? The first thing with rebreathers is their efficiency. With open circuit, you need big bulky tanks and a standard 12-litre tank. That's going to last you a good hour-long dive, but with a rebreather, you can do all of that with a tiny little 3-litre, and you probably won't even use the entire thing. If you're diving a lot, then rebreathers are simply cheaper to run than constant air fills because you simply use less gas for the same amount of diving. This is best for remote diving where air fills are hard to come by. That's where they truly excel. But also with open circuit, you're breathing whatever is pushed into that tank at the filling station for the entire dive. That's it. Rebreathers are constantly adjusting your breathing mix at different depths, so they can keep you at the optimum gas mix at all times. You can breathe the loop down to reduce the oxygen content, or the computer can increase the mix when you need to. It's always giving you the perfect mix to minimize your decompression. This is the best reason or argument for rebreathers to move more into the forefront of scuba diving life. When anybody talks about rebreathers, the cost has to come into the equation. Rebreathers, they're not cheap. There's no two bits about it. Often costing thousands, tens of thousands in some case. And you still have the servicing costs. You also have to add the cost of the scrubber. Granted, it's not ridiculously cheap, but it's an additional cost, and cleaning solutions as well that you don't have with open circuit. You have to clean rebreathers incredibly well because they're not pressurized, and you just got this like moist gas going round and round it. So one place where they do reduce costs is in their air fills. Smaller tanks are cheaper to fill, obviously, and because you're only using what you need, you're not exhaling expensive oxygen or helium with every single breath, they work out a lot cheaper. As the price of these gases increase, helium especially is getting very expensive, open circuit deep diving is going to become rarer. It's just going to become too expensive to dive open circuit trimix because you're just wasting a lot of helium. That being said, air is pretty easy to come by. So for recreational diving, I can't see rebreathers replacing open circuit unless the cost of rebreather units keep dropping and keep dropping. For most divers that only dive a couple of times a year, it will just not be worth investing in a unit. A set of regulators, yeah, they're not particularly expensive, but a $10,000 rebreather, that's a bit much. Rebreathers do require more training. If they cost the same as a set of regulators, then you couldn't just hang up your regulators and then pick up a rebreather. Open circuit is pretty bulletproof and pretty easy to use and just get on board with from the get-go. When something goes wrong on open circuit, it's pretty noisy, so you're aware of what the problem is. But with rebreathers, they can be quiet, so you need to be a bit more switched on to actually know what's going on. So existing scuba divers would all need to retrain, and scuba training itself from the get-go would be much more daunting for new students. We want more scuba divers, not fewer. Open circuit also teaches you some really bad habits that don't translate to rebreathers, so you do need to retrain yourself if you're moving on to them. A lot of divers, they'll need to retrain to dive on rebreathers before they become commonplace. Open circuit, you can just whack that mouthpiece out, swap to another one, swap back without much thought. But because rebreathers, the actual breathing loop itself isn't pressurized, you can't just take your mouthpiece out. Even on the surface, you have to flick a switch first, and you have to make sure you flick that properly. Breathing to control your buoyancy. That doesn't work anymore. Breathing out through your nose, that's going to alter your buoyancy underwater, and it's wasting gas. All of these things, again, I don't think the entire training construct around the world will change. That would be a huge, monumental undertaking for everyone to switch from open circuit to rebreather. I mean, 99% of instructors would all have to retrain themselves. That's not going to happen anytime soon. As I mentioned earlier, rebreathers can fail quietly, and scuba diving is already seen as a fairly dangerous sport in itself, so we don't need to scare any new prospective students with stories of divers hurting themselves just by their equipment failing. You have to be quite switched on and actually perform proper pre-dive safety checks to ensure that everything is working correctly with a rebreather. Open circuit, you turn a handle, you make sure it goes psh, and you're kind of ready to go. That's how simple it is. Rebreathers, not so much. Each diver, at the beginning of the dive, they have to pack their own scrubber, and whilst a lot of divers, in my experience, don't really know how to check the logbook on their own dive computer, I don't think they're really up to packing CO2 scrubber properly and reliably and understanding what the built-in dive computer in their rebreather is trying to tell them on a dive. So rebreathers, they are safe, don't get me wrong, as long as they're assembled correctly and used correctly. But they do require a higher state of mind, as it were. In all honesty, I can't see rebreathers replacing good old-fashioned open circuit regulators anytime soon for most scuba diving. There's just not enough benefit to cover the costs of training and the actual unit itself. For a standard week-long liveaboard, 20 divers or something, you're doing, 3 dives a day for 5 days? That's 300 dives in total. You need about 2 liters of scrubber for 2 dives. So just imagine the amount of space all of the scrubber, just the scrubber for that dive trip would take up for all of those divers on that boat, where space is already at a premium. I don't think that's too practical. Rebreathers aren't going anywhere though. They probably will increase in numbers because technology is becoming cheaper and more reliable and safer, but they're never going to replace good old-fashioned open circuit regulators from most diving. Jacques Cousteau pretty much hit the nail on the head when he and Emile made open circuit. If you do dive a lot, then it's definitely worth checking out rebreathers. Do the math and work out the costs of the equipment for the diving that you do and compare the running costs of a rebreather unit. They're cool and they will change your diving, but for most divers in recreational depths, the costs are just going to be prohibitive. But what do you think? Are you looking to move on to rebreathers, or is there something in particular that's holding you back? Have you only ever known rebreathers? You can start from scratch on rebreathers through some training agencies if you want to. So the only open circuit you'll ever know is in your bailout. Let us know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and of course, safe diving.
Calling all scuba divers want to stand out of the non-diving crowd? Do you want people to know that you're a scuba diver? Well, then our very own Spring store will help you out. We stock tees, stickers, hoodies, phone cases, even mugs that all have a scuba diving theme. From our super popular emotional Bolt Snap tee, our Cave Shark sticker, to our Scuba Dude hoodie, we have something for everyone. And our range is becoming more eco-friendly each month thanks to Spring's eco-friendly range. Each order is printed fresh, which means less waste, less plastic, and it's better for the environment, and also helps battle clothing waste as well. To view our full range, just click on the link pinned in the comments. And hey, why not treat yourself to 10% off your total order with the discount code DSN10. That's DSN10. Okay, back to the video.